Hello loved viewers, you are most welcome to our channel Poetry Online. In this lesson, we shall be discussing The Lion and the Jewel by Wole Soyinka. Kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get updates on all our new videos. Once again, let us assure you of a very interesting discussion. Get ready for this lesson. It is often claimed that the play presents a conflict between African tradition on one hand or modernity on the other. This is true. The play combines a number of themes and conflict into one. There is a conflict between the young and the old, and there is a conflict between men and women. The age-old battle of the sexes, the conflict between Lakunle and Barunka, represents the crisis of the modern versus the traditional. But when Lakunle and Sidi clash at the beginning of the play, it is also the battle of the sexes, in addition to modernity versus tradition. And when Sidi goes to town the supposedly impotent Barunka, we find there is a combination of young versus old, women against men, as well as modernity versus tradition. In the end, it is not the old man who is shown up to be impotent or incapable, but the young Lakunle who is symbolically revealed as incapable of securing the affection of the beautiful maiden. Thus, in the end, the conflict between the young and the old, men and women, tradition and modernity, all become one. Each is an aspect of the other. The first thing the reader notices in the dramatist's very elaborate stage direction is the contrast in the appearance between two characters, Lakunle and Sidi. Sidi's outfit is simple, but emphasizes her beauty, her seductiveness, and charm. That of Lakunle is incongruous in its effect. It is a contradictory jumble of odds and ends. The details of his attire are symbolic in a sense. They convey a message about Lakunle's position on the whole question of modernity versus tradition. Lakunle thinks he is a modern man, but his suit is an old-style English one, threadbare but not ragged, clean but not ironed, and obviously a size or two too small. There is something not quite right about Lakunle's appearance, which is best expressed in the tennis shoes he is wearing with his suit. He looks more like somebody who has borrowed clothing, or he looks more like a man in borrowed clothing. His very attire shows that he does not understand the Western culture he thinks he is an expert in. When Lakunle begins to talk, we soon realize that he is a man who is addicted to big words, even though he seeks to show himself as cultured, learned, intelligent, smart, and witty, who is in constant touch with the white man's way of wooing a girl, and who is full of the white man's knowledge. He only succeeds in ridiculing himself. His language is excessive and sometimes nonsensical. Sidi, on the other hand, speaks with simple dignity and common sense. She knows where she belongs and is not impressed by Lakunle's newfangled notions. She consents to be his wife, but only if he does that which is laid down by custom or tradition. The first confrontation between Lakunle and Sidi is what is technically known as the exposition, during which the author sets the plot rolling and introduces the elements which will develop into a climax and bring it to a resolution. Let's see how Wole Soyinka sets the scene. What is the basis of the conflict between Sidi and Lakunle, and how is the humor brought out? At their very first meeting in the play, Lakunle, believing that a modern gentleman does not stand by and watch a woman carrying a load, offers to take the bucket which Sidi is carrying with ease. His acts, however, turns out to be a clumsy gesture of misguided chivalry and he only succeeds in spilling water on himself. When Sidi complains and asks him if he is not ashamed of the mess he has caused, his response is rather cruel. Lakunle says, "This is what the stew pot said to the fire. Have you known no shame at your age, licking my bottom?" But she was tickled just the same. With every action or speech, Lakunle makes the audience or readers to laugh, but the laughter is at his expense. Nothing he does is right. Nothing he says is also right. In his next speech, he reveals something of his so-called learning. There may well be something good in what he's saying about the effect of heavy load on Sidi's spine, but Lakunle exaggerates the point till it becomes absurd, diminishing its impact and making the readers to laugh harder at his nonsensical comments. He says, "I have told you not to carry loads on your head, but you are as stubborn as an illiterate goat. It is bad for the spine, and it shortens your neck, so that very soon you will have no neck at all." This is very ridiculous. He then complains about the way Sidi is dressed. In his view, her simple attire exposes too much of her to the common gaze. However, one is not sure whether his objection is based on his notion of how civilized women dress, or whether it is motivated by his jealousy over the fact that other men see parts of Sidi's breast. She retorts by telling him that it is he who is the object of public ridicule, and his response is that savages like Sidi do not appreciate him. Again, his misguided conceit is laughable. He says, "For what? What is a jewel to pigs? If now I am misunderstood by you and your race of savages, I rise above towns and remain unruffled." In his next speech, which is meant to show more of his learning, he declares the superiority of men over women. This ridiculous view, which he claims has been proven by scientists, but which in fact exposes him as a man with very little knowledge, a man with very old-fashioned ideas on the question of gender equality, and not at all the modern progressive person he claims to be. He says, "Please, don't be angry with me. I didn't mean you in particular. And anyway, it isn't what I say. The scientists have proved it. It is in my books. Women have a smaller brain than men. That's why they are called the weaker sex." Sidi's response to Lakunle's scientific claims offers a good starting point for beginning an examination on her character. While he tries hard to be bookish, intelligent, smart, and to appear learned, she deflates him easily with simple common sense. She asks Lakunle, "How can you say we women are weak when we do all the hard work in the home?" And indeed, this remark is typical of her. She refuses to be impressed by Lakunle's fancy idea and maintain her belief in what she is used to, finding Lakunle's idea a little crazy. One thing that is so obvious is that his language is taken from books and his words are second-hand that anyone would doubt his sincerity. The truth is that Lakunle and Sidi are totally mismatched. The man lives in a world of words and half-baked and half-understood books. The girl is totally sensible, with her feet firmly planted in the native soil and culture. Indeed, her position is simple. Not having been brought up on notions of romantic love, she says she will agree to marry Lakunle if he will pay her bride price. At this, he launches into an outrageous verbal attack on the institution of the bride price. He says, "A savage custom, barbaric, outdated, rejected, denounced, accursed, excommunicated, archaic, degrading, humiliating, unspeakable, redundant, retrogressive, remarkable, unpalatable." After saying all these words, Sidi simply asked him, Is the bag empty? Why did you stop? This makes the readers and audience laugh at Lakunle's nonsensical comments. However, Lakunle is back with another statement which says, I owe only the shorter companion dictionary, but I have ordered the longer one. You wait. He doesn't even know that Sidi is fed up with his use of words and teases him to that effect. He thinks she wants him to say more of such words. Part of Lakunle's problem is that he is in love with words for their own sake and wants to use them whether they are appropriate or not. In a sense, his mastery of English words is as uncertain as his mastery of the Western culture that he claims to represent. His vision of modern married life is quite living on his plate, just as his notion of a fashionable wife with red paint on her lips is quite ridiculous. Lakunle is constantly undermining himself without realizing it. And this is one reason why he is so funny. This is an aspect of Soyinka's wit. He makes Lakunle say something which sounds quite reasonable at first, and then makes him to go ahead to spoil the effect of what he has said with something nonsensical. When the news comes that Sidi's picture, taken by a photographer from Lagos, has been used in a glamour magazine, her response is interesting. Up to that moment, she has been a sensible and modest young woman, firmly rooted in the customs and traditions of a community. However, on hearing of her photos, she revealed a youthful vanity. She begins to think she is too good for a men's school teacher, and is especially thrilled when she has been given greater prominence in the magazine than the king of the kingdom, the Bali of Ilunjili, Barunka. Sidi says, Sidi is more important than the Bali, more famous than that panther on trees. He is beneath me now, your fearless rake, the scourge of womanhood, but now he shares the corner of the leaf with the lowest of the low, with the dark out village latrines. She seems to share Lakunle's obsession of the old village chief, who seems to have a reputation as a great seducer of women and an enemy of progress. The dance which comes on at this point of the play marks the end of the first act and celebrates the vitality of youth, especially Sidi's youth and beauty, which seems to have triumphed, certainly over Lakunle and temporarily over Barunka. But Sidi's triumph over Barunka is one that will be reversed. Now, the entrance of Barunka towards the end of the first plot is advanced a stage further. What we have at this stage is not just the confrontation between the misguided Lakunle, who believes himself as a modern and civilized man and out to change the world, and the sensible but youthful Sidi. A third factor has entered the conflict in the person of the crafty Barunka. This old one too wants to marry Sidi. Contemplating Sidi's picture in the magazine, he nods slowly to himself and declares, Yes, it is 5 full months since last I took a wife. 5 full months. The next act, Noon, advances the plot in a number of significant ways. At the opening of the act, Lakunle seems to be completely defeated by the triumphant Sidi, who appears to be getting the better half of Barunka as well. But this act also brings out something in Sidi we didn't see earlier. She seems to have been influenced by Lakunle's new ideas. She's not as differential towards tradition as she had appeared earlier to be. Act 2 opens with Lakunle following Sidi and carrying a bundle of firewood, which she should have been carrying according to the demands of the custom. This is a reversal of what should normally be happening. Again, Lakunle thinks himself as a modern man but he is presented as someone who is misguided and without dignity, particularly as Sidi shows neither appreciation nor respect for what he does for her. He is playing the role of a woman, and indeed, throughout the scene, Lakunle is hardly a man. Sidi treats him like a little child, asking him to be quiet and not to be tiresome. However, her reproaches only revoke him into more ridiculous behavior. He gets down on his knees, for this is his idea of European romance, and begins to cover Sidi's hand with kisses, calling her all manner of biblical names, which of course means absolutely nothing to Sidi. Lakunle says, "My Ruth, my Rahel, Esther, Bathsheba, thou psalm of fabled perfection. From Genesis to Revelation, listen not to the voice of this infidel." Lakunle talks as if beauty can only be described in terms of foreign women and not African women. Clearly, he has what can be best described as colonial mentality, and as usual, Sidi's answer is a straightforward rejection of this attitude. Sidi says, "Now, that's your other game, giving me funny names you picked up in your wretched books. My name is Sidi, and now let me be. My name is Sidi, and I am beautiful." It is at this stage, when the young girl is filled with conceits, that Sadiku announces to her that Baronka wishes to marry her. But Sidi at this moment is too intoxicated with her own newly discovered beauty to consider the old Baronka's offer. Indeed, at this moment, she does not think there's a man on earth who is good enough for her. The sun maybe, but a mere man never. Here, Wole Soyinka is gently making fun of the vanity of youth, and the way Sidi worships herself is quite amusing. She says, "To think I took no notice of my velvet skin, how smooth it is, and no man ever thought to praise the fullness of my breast." Sadiku attempts to tempt Sidi with a description of the kind of life that awaits her as the old chief's wife. But ironically, Sadiku begins by telling the young girl that she will enjoy when the prospective husband dies. Imagine that, persuading a young girl to marry a man by telling her what she will get when the man dies. It is like saying, "The man I am asking you to marry is really a dying man." And it is here that Sidi reveals that she has learned something from Lakunle. She seems to have acquired a quite untraditional disregard for the authority and dignity of the chief. Sidi says, "He seeks to have me as his property, where I might fade beneath his jealous hold. Ah, Sadiku, the schoolman here has taught me certain things, and my image has taught me all the rest." Sidi seems here to see the chief not as the revered custodian of the tradition of the people, but inasmuch as the same way Lakunle sees him, as a pampered, dirty old man who flatters his dying manhood by possessing young girls. Sidi's disrespect for the chief shocks the traditionally minded Sadiku, who blames Lakunle for it. Typically, Lakunle retreats in panic as Sadiku advances on him, and it is Sidi who rescues him. It is clear from this scene that Sidi uses language in a more effective manner than Lakunle. Her images have more freshness and power from the simple reason that they are more original and drawn from her immediate environment, unlike Lakunle's, which are second-hand, taken from books and other Western works. The description of the age difference between Baronka and Sidi, given by Sidi to Sadiku, shows her own vital youthfulness as opposed to Baronka's decayed old age. She says, "Compare my image and your Lord's, an age of difference. I am the twinkle of a jewel, but he is the hindquarter of a lion." The final image of Baronka is especially cheeky. The chief, who sees himself as a lion, is described by Sidi as a mere part of the carcass of an animal. And when Sadiku plays her last card, asking the young girl if she will at least have supper with Baronka, Sidi's response is hilarious because It is so unconventional. Surely, Sidi knows that the fact that Barunka is married is not an issue here. In a traditional polygamous situation, he can marry as many women as he wishes. Sidi is merely playing when she says she doesn't sup with married men. Lakunle, ever jealous of Barunka, then recounts the story, told in a mime, of how the chief prevented the railway, a symbol of progress, from passing through Ilunjili, suggesting hereby that Barunka is an enemy of progress. But there are two things wrong with Lakunle's account. First of all, Barunka is not there to defend himself, and when later in the play he presents his point of view, we find that he is not exactly against progress. Secondly, Lakunle's excessive language, as usual, has an effect of making his story sound ridiculous. Lakunle says, "They marked the route with stakes, ate through the jungle, and began the tracks. Trade, progress, adventure, success, civilization, fame, international conspicuosity. It was all within the grasp of Ilunjili." Once again, the pompous expression, international conspicuosity, takes away the seriousness of what he's saying and diminishes it. Besides, he reveals here his envy of the old man and wants to know the secret of Barunka's success with women. He senses quite rightly that the old man has something he doesn't have. Lakunle says, "Ah, sometimes I wish I had led his kind of life. Such luscious bosom makes his nightly pillow. I am sure he keeps a timetable, just as I do at school, only way to ensure fair play. He must be healthy to keep going as he does. I don't know what the women see in him. His eyes are small and always red with wine, and he must possess some secret. No, I don't envy him. Just the one woman for me. Alone I stand, for progress, with Sidi, my chosen soulmate, the one woman of my life. Sidi, Sidi, where are you?" The ridiculous man does not even realize that his supposed soulmate has abandoned him on stage. Poor man. Act 2 closes with a scene in which we see Barunka, the lion of Ilunjili, in bed, being ministered unto by his current favorite. It is important to note that even the old chief does not escape Soyinka's satirical treatment. It is obvious that, throughout, the play is a satire on the kind of Africans who adopt Western attitude without understanding them, and who as a result is neither one thing or the other. In this scene, however, it is the old ruler who is shown to be over-pampered and spoiled. He is lying in his bed, having the hair of his armpits pulled out by his current favorite. He has to endure the pain of having the hair painfully pulled out. He endures this quite painful operation with a sensual ah, as presumably intended to show how tough he is. But the scene also displays his excessive sensuality. Indeed, the whole scene is Soyinka's satirical portrait of a traditional African ruler, showing his excessive love of pleasure and his overindulgence in it. Sadiku comes to inform Barunka of Sidi's impudent refusal of his offer. First, he is outraged and makes a speech in which he proclaims all the great feats he has performed in recent months, including his strength in bed. Barunka says, "Does any of my wives report a failing in my manliness? The strongest of them all still wearies long before the lion does, and so would she, had I the briefest chance to teach the unflinched birdling the lack of wisdom to embrace the richness mustiness of age." In his angry frustration, his cunning mind conceives a plan. He announces with great show of confidentiality to Sadiku that he is in fact impotent. Barunka says, "The time has come when I can fool myself no more. I am no man, Sadiku. My manhood ended near a week ago." Sadiku's response to Barunka's announcement is the point where sexual theme the theme of the battle of the sexes is made more explicit. She is happy about Baronka's supposed impotence and sees it as a victory for women. In her view, it is women who always win. Though men rave and brag about their strength, the final victory, she claims, always goes to women who are claimed to be the weaker sex, but in reality are the strong ones. Here, the readers notice that with each act, the plot is carried forward with an introduction of another factor. Baronka's rumored impotence will certainly entice the curious Sidi to come and mock him, and in that confrontation, the play will come to its climax and move swiftly to its resolution. The first thing the readers notices when Sidi and Baronka begins to exchange words is that, despite the ballet's age, the two of them are more evenly matched than Sidi and Lakunle, who are both young. The verbal contest between them is more subtle and indeed more witty and intelligent. They are able to get at each other without seeming to, until they finally arrive at a point where the younger one, Sidi, is compelled to appreciate the wisdom of the older one, Baronka. This is something Sidi does not appreciate until she meets him. But the first thing we learn about Baronka when Sidi enters his palace is that he is in fact learning to move with the times. His servants have formed a union, the Palace Workers' Union, and once a week they take a day off. Sidi rather impudently asks if it is a day off for Baronka's wives too. She wants to jump to the conclusion that Baronka's wives have abandoned their position in the house because he is somehow incapable of satisfying them. She is disappointed to learn that Baronka's favorite, Eliatu's offense, has nothing to do with Baronka's impotence. Sidi was hoping Eliatu's offense had a sexual origin. Baronka, who is at this point engaged in a wrestling match, a symbol of no doubt of his potency or capability, both as a man and as a representative of tradition. He deliberately gives all his attention to the contest he is engaged in, as though the young lady Sidi, who has entered his room, is of no interest to him whatsoever. Sidi's expedition, which she undertakes for the purpose of taunting Baronka, gets off to a weak start when Baronka pretends that he is unaware of her refusal of his marriage proposal and of his invitation of her to have supper with him, since Sadiku has brought no reply. The young woman is especially hurt that Baronka calls her an unwanted stranger and belittles her even further when he says, "Is a man's bedroom to be made naked to any flea that chances to wander through?" Baronka clearly wins the initial onslaught, but Sidi is determined to taunt him about his alleged impotence, so she renews the attack. Surely, she argues that Baronka's caring favorite would not have abandoned her post unless she was in some way dissatisfied with her husband. And here, she is suggesting that the old chief is unable to satisfy his wives. But again, Baronka easily parries the impudent assault. He does not concern himself with the petty purpose of his wives. Sidi then decides to take side with Baronka's opponents in the wrestling exercise in which the chief is engaged. But what is interesting is that she gives a reason for her choice in a proverb. If a tortoise cannot tumble, it does not mean that he can stand. To which Baronka responds also with a proverb. When the child is full of riddles, the mother has one pot the less. Sidi continues the verbal battle with an offensive description of a hypothetical suitor, even though it is obvious to Baronka that he is the one being described. For instance, when asked if the presumptuous suitor is rich, she responds that rumor has it so. If repulsive, she responds that he is old and this makes Baronka wins. Again, if the man is miserly, Sidi responds that there is a rumor that he has developed a taste for ground corn and pepper because he is too mean to spend money on stuff. This allegation angers Baronka that he protests vigorously, forgetting that Sidi is supposedly only discussing a hypothetical suitor. With a sudden burst of energy, he leaves his opponent in the wrestling match over his shoulder, a clear symbolic indication of how Sidi's presence serves to boost his power. Too late to recollect himself, he claims to have been upset on behalf of the supposed suitor because he himself has been a victim of such kind of malicious gossip. The question and answer session gets really interesting when she is asked if the supposed suitor has been a productive parent. Her answer to this question is once upon a time. Pressed to explain the cryptic answer and says again, alluding to Baronka's alleged impotence, that he is so tired with the day's affair that at night he turns his buttocks to his wives. When Baronka suggests that the suitor or husband uses his strength mindfully of years to come, that is, the suitor uses his energy sparsely and wisely, Sidi in a clever pun insists that the husband's first duty is to husband his wives, that is, to satisfy his wife sexually, and again she suggests that Baronka has lost her sexual power. In the exchange between Baronka and Sidi, she shows a more mature and deeper aspect of her character, not to mention a more nimble intelligence than has been evident in her squabbles with Lakunle. It is as if Lakunle is not capable of bringing out the best in Sidi, while in the verbal feud with Baronka, Sidi is able to match the traditional and proverbial language of the old man. An example is found in this exchange when Baronka, complaining of immodesty of modern African women, "Now my Sidi, you have not caught this new and strange disease, I hope." Sidi reply by saying, "The trending of my smock, does Baronka not know the marking of the village loom?" Baronka replies, "But will Sidi, the pride of mothers, will she always wear it?" Again, Sidi replies with, "Will Sidi, the proud daughter of Baronka, will she step out naked?" What is fascinating about Sidi's response is the way she picks up on Baronka's own words and images and bend them to her advantage. Thus, more than ever before, she emerges as someone who is deeply versed with the tradition of her people, a girl who has been properly brought up to speak and behave in accordance to custom. At the end of this exchange, Baronka, who has regarded her as just another silly modern girl, is obliged to say, "To think that I once thought Sidi is the eye's delight, but she is vain, and her head is feather light and always giddy with the trivial thoughts, and now I find her deep and wise beyond her years." And it is at this point that Baronka begins to reveal to her and to the audience his real position in the clash of modern versus traditional. What we discover here is that though Baronka is a traditionalist, he is not dead set against progress as Lakunle has led us to believe. Indeed, he makes it clear to the surprise of Sidi and accidentally of the wrestler that he is for progress provided certain precautions are taken. He leads Sidi to a machine for making stamp which he has caused a village blacksmith to manufacture and which he has designed himself. He will have imported a device for his village, but he prefers one which comes from the village itself. In his view, progress must be built on tradition. It must be an organic development of what there already is, not something forced upon the village as Lakunle seeks to do. Baronka says, "The word, dear child, of the palace blacksmith, built in full secrecy, all is not well with it. But I will find a cause, and then Ilunjili will boast of its own tags on paper, made with stamp like this. For long I dreamt it, and there it stands, child of my thought." Next, he reveals to the wonder-struck young woman that the stamp to be printed by the machine will bear a picture of Sidi's face rather than the impersonal images which are found on other stamps. In other words, he seeks a more human kind of progress, but more importantly, Sidi's face and Barunka's mind, which invents the machine, thus combined to symbolize the way of the future, a combination of the young and the old, or the new and the old. He complains that progress tends to make everything look the same. Modern products, houses, cars, dresses tend to have no individuality because they are mass-produced. It is this lack of individuality which he detests and not progress itself. Barunka says, "I do not hate progress, only its nature, which makes all roofs and faces look the same. And the wish of one old man is that here and there, among the bridges and Madras roads, below the humming birds which smoke the face of Sango Dispender, of the snake-tongued lightning, and the reckless broom that will be wielded in the years to come, we must leave virgin plots of lives, reach decay, and the tongue of vapor rising from forgotten heaps and compost lying undisturbed." To counteract the boring sameness of modernity, Barunka proposes that some items from the past should be preserved to add dignity and variety to the awful sameness which progress might otherwise bring. It is worth noting that the picture of the future that Barunka paints is not a glorious one. Yes, there will be aeroplanes and easy road access from one place to another, but he described the road as Medros, referring to motor accidents which have always plagued Nigeria and are now a menace in Ghana and other African countries and the world at large. He also talks about the mass adoption of the Western culture that characterized Africans' notion of progress. It is against this wholesale adoption of the Western culture that Barunka sounds a caution. It is to be noticed that, as Barunka reveals his vision of progress, he also sexually seduces Sidi. Interestingly, as the old man describes his vision of the future, the young woman observes quite rightly that he speaks almost like the school teacher, except that his words fly on a different path. And Barunka agrees by saying, "The proof of wisdom is the wish to learn even from children, and the haste of youth must learn its temper from the glows of ancient leather, from a strength ninth close along the grain. The school teacher and I must learn one from the other. Is this not right?" And this really is Barunka's message. The old must adapt and take the new, and similarly, the young must learn to benefit from the experience of the old. The new must be directed by tradition. Lakunle's weakness is that he possesses no tradition on which to build a new one. His modernity is based on nothing. He is bound to lack strength or vigor, or to use the metaphor of the play, he is bound to lack potency. And he also, in the final act of the play, in which Sidi set out to town the supposedly impotent old man, the rest of the play is designed to restore the comic structure. Lakunle, with characteristic melodrama, expresses anxiety and fear about what Barunka has done to Sidi, who has gone all night, while Sadiku calmly enjoys his antiques. The drummers and dancers who come on at this point merely serves to increase the dramatic irony of the moment. The dancers celebrate the defeat of Barunka with Sadiku as the chief celebrant, and Lakunle enjoys the performance, but the audience know that the ballet of Ilunjili is not impotent and has in fact succeeded in annexing the jewel. When Sidi finally emerges on stage, Lakunle says things that are funny to the audience. Lakunle says, "But Sidi, did you escape? Tell me the worst, I'll take it like a man. Is it the fright which affects you so, or did he?" For a brief moment, Lakunle appears noble when he offers to marry Sidi, knowing that she has been deflowered by Barunka. Lakunle says, "Man takes a fallen woman by the hand, and ever after they live happily. Moreover, I will admit, it solves the problem of a bride price too." But Lakunle spoils the moment. He apparently has an ulterior motive for offering to marry Sidi. He offers to marry Sidi because now that she is no longer a virgin, she has no reason to ask for a bride price from him. As it turns out that Sidi does not want him anyway, not after being with the old man, the Lion of Ilunjili. And so, the play ends with the prospect of a wedding between Sidi and Baronka, with the entire village in a festive celebration, and with Lakunle happily pursuing another young girl. This is the typical ending of a comedy. In this section, we have learned the following. Sidi is indeed a properly brought up African girl who knows her culture, and this is why she is the heroine of the play. Baronka's vision of the future is superior to that of Lakunle's vision of the future. Much of the comedy depends on the clever conversation between Sidi and Baronka.